Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers, sisters, viewers, friends of Ikra TV, welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm your host Iqbal Bana. I come into your homes every week without fail, hopefully, and you enjoy the programs and my guests that I bring to you and the subjects that we discuss on this program, which affects our lives on a day-to-day basis. Every one of us have some issues that we contend with, whether it's to do with internal family or external forces, issues around Islamophobia, education, health and employment, discrimination. So I try and bring guests who try and shed some light and share their knowledge and their experience in trying to help improve the lives of our community in this country and abroad. For the last few weeks, we've been talking about politics on these programs. Mainly, we know what is happening in the Middle East, and as a result of which, millions of people across the country have been demonstrating, asking for ceasefire and peace in Gaza, in Palestine. And the political parties have basically ignored, or the people feel that the political parties have ignored and not listened to their voices. So we've seen this campaign develop across our nation, where people have expressed their frustration with both the Conservative and the Labour Party for not listening to what people have been asking for. And there's this movement that has developed to try and get independent councillors to stand at the next local election, which is going to be happening on Thursday. And for the last few weeks, we've been talking about why some people want to stand and why they want to make a change, to see a change taking place in their locality, mainly because they feel that the existing councillors, or the majority of the existing councillors, have not followed the cries and the requests of the communities, which is to step down from their political parties and make a stand against what is going on. So we have across the country happening on Thursday, lots of people standing as independents. And in Bradford, as we spoke about 2 weeks ago, there are 15, now maybe 14, 15 people who are standing, some of them very young. Ali Islam, who was on my program, is only 22. He had previously stood as an independent and nearly won the election in his ward. He and his colleagues are standing again, 15 of them, trying to send a very clear message, in particular to the Labour Party, to say, you have not listened to us, and therefore we are going to teach you a lesson. We're going to take over some of these seats, and we're going to make sure that the local authority has a new broom sweeping across the policies that they have to appoint and apply. So I'm really deeply honoured to have with me for the first time Sister Kamar Ahmed from Bradford. So a local person, born and bred in Bradford, never been into politics before, and she has now felt that because her voice and the voices of millions of others is not being heard, she wants to take up a stand to try and raise that voice in the local community, in the local council, to try and say to the politicians, we are here because you are not listening to us, and if you're not going to listen to us, we're going to try and take over the local authority positions so we can bring about the change that the community wants. My other guest is no stranger. You have seen him many, many times on my program. Maqsood Ahmed, former Chief Executive of the British Muslim Heritage Foundation, of the Centre, former advisor to the Home Secretary, has worked across many government departments, including the Prison Service and the NHS. Currently, he is the CEO of the Hope Academy, working as an independent consultant. So both of you, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome and thank you for coming. Sister Kamar, I'll start with you. Thank you for coming. I know it's a very short notice you agreed to come. Now, obviously, you are sort of fairly new to politics, as you said. Never stood for council before. This is the first time you're standing. The experience of standing itself must be really interesting and challenging. How have you found that?
It's
canvassing, things like that.
So it's I'm out of my comfort zone at the moment, and I have these conversations every day.
Listen, I'm out of my comfort zone every time I sit in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can find a much better person to do this than me. But sorry, go on.
But right now we have to come out of our comfort zone. And we've been challenged, to the extreme, and that's how it is. So canvassing as well. When I started doing this, I said, I'm not going to knock on any doors. I've given the people of where I'm standing in Ollerton the choice to vote, you know, other than Labour and Conservative. And they've got the choice there, but I'm not going to knock on doors. I can't do it. But I've been knocking on doors. I've not knocked on many doors.
It goes with the job.
Yeah, it does.
So how do you find that then?
It's been welcoming. They've been saying brilliant. Some people are saying we've already sent in our postal votes before I approach them, and yeah, we're voting for independent and looking at it. And my name is a little bit deceptive. It's Qamar Ahmed, so some people thought it's a man's name.
It's a male.
It's a male. So and even to get my leaflet done, it was coming out of my comfort zone to get my photograph done and outside and etc. But it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because last year, so this is going back to last year, I've always blindly voted Labour, apart from George Galloway came to Bradford.
Right. Yeah.
And I've not even looked at, what their policies are, who the people are that are standing, apart from the fact that they're Labour. But last year I was so disheartened with what happened a couple of years ago, approaching councillors, MPs. They don't respond to you. They don't even acknowledge a WhatsApp message. They're online, you ring them. And so last year was the first year that I didn't vote, and neither did my family, even though I've been out and my husband used to work away to get a proxy vote, make sure I go out and vote, and being quite, active on that.
Like millions of other people, particularly in the Muslim community, including non-Muslims, who, what they're watching and witnessing now, feel that, the politics of this country is not something that they want to agree with. So that galvanized you into taking some action.
They don't represent us. And I was waiting for my Labour, the would-be candidate to come to my doorstep so I could question them, but she came and she ran away. I wanted to say, I don't want to vote for you this year, and can you give me a reason? Can you, justify why you're standing? But she ran away. And
so she wouldn't answer your questions either?
No, she didn't. She came to the door and my husband answered and she went away. So, and this year, I stood to give, and this happened a few months before October the 7th. I was sat in the living room and I said to my daughter, I said, you know what, I could do a better job than what they're doing.
Right.
And, it's quite sort of ironic, really, and it's so sad that this has happened. But, if I don't stand now, and I don't stand up for my community, and I don't stand up for the people of Palestine, on local level and a national level, then anything that I do.
Can you give us a little sort of idea? What is do you say Ollerton area?
Yeah, Thornton and Ollerton.
What type of communities around there? Is it mainly Asian? Is it mixed?
No, it's a mix, and it's a good mix, and people get on, and I'm really a proud resident of Ollerton.
Right. And how are you finding the response to your call to support you from non-Muslims?
I think the traditional Labour vote, the Muslim vote, is not going to go to Labour. Right. Everything's changing. People are fed up. People were fed up before. Some obviously the people that support the councillor, who's a Labour anyway, they probably will still support her, but it's changed a lot. And they're grateful that we've got an independent candidate. They want that independent.
Do you see a difference between the old and the young? Are young people more galvanised, more wanting to see that change happen? And do you feel the old people are still sticking to their old Labour traditions?
No, because they've seen the genocide. They're seeing that they're not being represented. Right. So yeah, and I would class myself as an older person, middle-aged.
I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Right. So I've given the people of Ollerton the choice, choice to vote independent and not be like me last year and not have that choice.
One of the things we find sometimes as men difficult to understand is how interested are women, particularly from the Asian community, in the politics that you've articulated, the need to understand the need for change. Do you find that women are more sympathetic now to the message you're putting across?
So, I'm an officer of Bradford Friends of Palestine, which is founded in November.
Right.
We have 13 officers on there.
Right.
Out of the 13 officers, I think 4 are men.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a very racially mixed group. A lot of older people, a lot of younger people, probably from about 20 till about over 60. And the women are really active. So I'm not only just involved with women from Bradford, it's women from West Yorkshire, Huddersfield, not in our Bradford Friends of Palestine, but in terms of the Palestinian groups that have come together. So it's Huddersfield, Halifax, Wakefield, we have close connections. And the women at the forefront of these organisations
Right,
are
right.
leading the marches, are leading the actions. So
Excellent.
we have a march this week in Skipton and Halifax,
Oh, right.
and there are women leading these,
Right.
you know, and there are women leading the actions in Bradford. Women led the march 2 weeks ago.
So women are
Yeah.
now coming at the forefront
They
of the
are.
politics. Maksud, is that a revelation, isn't it, for somebody like you and me?
It
I mean,
is
we've
a-
been in politics for a long, long time. We've never seen this before, have we?
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for inviting me again. Yes, absolutely, and I think that's a breath of fresh air for me,
Yeah.
because I think the men have failed. If I'm going to be very
Yeah.
bluntly, in the past, if you
Yeah.
look at the men in councillors, the men MPs, the men in decision making, and so forth, we actually haven't got a good record
Yeah.
as men with regards to when it comes to politics or
Talk about
policy.
yourself, mate.
You know,
I'm
in a
just
sense, on
joking.
it.
I know
We've
what you-
tried
I know
our
what you
best.
mean. I
We
know what you
tried
mean.
our
Yeah, I know
best.
what you mean.
But I think there's always something missing. And I think the sisters now, the sisters movement, and I see that on marches for Palestine, you know, in Manchester, in Bradford, and others, in national marches. It's great to see young women who are actually now taking that
It's
mantle
not just
going
Muslim
forward.
women, is it?
It's not just
No.
Muslim
I
women.
mean, you
It's,
can
it's,
see
it's
what's
all,
happening in the
all
United
women.
States. Yeah,
All
you
women.
can see in the United States
In the
all the
campuses.
students. Yeah, on the
Yeah.
campuses.
Absolutely.
A lot of them are young women
Yeah.
who are fighting for justice
Yeah.
and equality and humanity.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing that we must do, though, I think there's a gap that we never had. Because these brave women who are putting their head above the parapet, they need to be supported and defended. Because they will be attacked.
Oh, yeah,
They'll
they
be
will.
attacked by men within, they'll be attacked from people from outside, and so forth. And one thing that we must learn is that we didn't have that base, we didn't have that strong foundation when people come for you. Because when you go into politics or policy like we have been doing, both of us, you are saying things that are actually going to make the powerful very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So therefore, when you're making the powerful very uncomfortable, there'll be charges against you.
Yeah.
So you need organisation behind you to actually protect you as well. If you don't have that protection, what we're doing really, Iqbal Bhai, is we are setting up sisters to fail. We're setting up young people to fail. Because it's a very vicious world out there when you enter politics.
I mean, you've raised a very important point. I think I asked this point to earlier Islam when he came as well. And you know, there's a movement, as I say, around the whole of the country, that there are independent people like yourselves who are not aligned to any political party. I mean, like you said, you were blindly, like most of us in the old days, voted Labour regardless, whoever was standing. I mean, I remember there were wards where they used to say you can put up a monkey or a donkey and they're still under the banner of Labour and still win. How are you finding existing members of the Labour Party? Most of them are probably quite senior people in terms of age.
Yeah.
Right? How are they responding to you challenging them?
Well, they obviously don't like it.
Right.
Yeah. They obviously don't like it, and they haven't come forward until election time. So now they're putting it on their leaflets that we've stood up for Palestine, and they're coming out and they're putting motions in that don't make any sense, and they're just making themselves look stupid, to be honest.
Have you had any intimidation? Because I know I've heard in some places,
Yeah.
Councillor Amar Anwar, for example, is he's in Ravensthorpe in Dewsbury.
Yeah.
The police are investigating because he was intimidated
Yeah.
by some young people. Have you had anything like that? Any threats or anything like that?
To be honest, I haven't. I've come across a bit of sort of negativity, or we haven't seen you around here, but I haven't had any intimidation or stuff.
That's good.
Such. But I know in other areas they will have, because we've got wards in Bradford that are quite vicious.
Right.
Yeah, and I do worry for those candidates, because I think
This is the power of politics.
and something happened on the weekend, and I'm thinking, these are local elections. It's not a gangster land, and it shouldn't be happening. And that's what we want to get rid of. So I think standing as an independent is real people standing for, real people
Real
standing for the
change.
community. So
Right.
it's getting rid of all parties, all politics, and it's a revolution happening. So this year we have 14 candidates. I think we were supposed to have 15. And when the elections come round again, we hope to have candidates in every ward, challenging every seat. So
Right.
30 at least. I don't know if it's, it's 30 wards. So it will grow. So we're starting off with 14. It's going to double and it's going to triple and it's going to spread ripples across.
Well, Well,
West Yorkshire and UK. And the women that are at the forefront of Europe actually that we have connections with are also wanting to stand.
Oh,
But
right.
they're also in positions like me, because when you spoke to me this morning, I said, look, I've got a checklist of all these things that I have to do before I get out, because I've got the school run. I've got to put the dinner on, get the kids, and I said I'll bring my son because I don't have babysitting. So the women and what they've said is that we're not going to stand now, but we will stand next year or the year after. So
I mean, for a mother, a full-time mother, housewife, which you told me you are,
yeah,
to take on this challenge,
yeah,
Allah give you the biggest strength that He can
Yeah.
give you and bestow His mercies on you, because it is a challenge. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it.
yeah,
And you are shifting the sands of politics in this country at the moment. And as I say, this is happening throughout the country. There are people up and down the country who are standing as independent. The local election and councillors is happening in all the major cities and towns. And it's not just a Muslim backlash against the Labour Party. There are many, many non-Muslims who are also standing to want to send a very clear message, particularly to the Labour Party, but also the Conservative Party as well. And as I said last week and the week before, I've invited members of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party to come in this programme and have a discussion as to why they still hold on to some of those policies. And if they still want to come on my programme, they're more than happy for them to come. So if you're listening to watching this programme, if you want to contribute, as I say every week, the number will come up on the screen, 01274 214 299. Last week we had so many phone calls who wanted to share with our viewers their thoughts about this great independent movement that is now sort of taking place. Those people who are still thinking about voting and where to vote, Maqsood, what will your advice be to people? I've come across some young people saying, is it worth going out and voting? And I'm saying to them, are you crazy or something? What would you say to them?
It's absolutely worthwhile going and voting. Because don't forget, when we had this discussion a long time ago as well, people had to fight for their rights to have a right to vote. So they mustn't take it lightly. Now they've got the freedom to vote. They can't be complacent, young people. I'm not saying they are. In fact, some of the young people that I know and that I work with, they're very, very active. The consciousness that's been raised within young people because of the Palestinian issue, and also because of other issues before, I think that's never sort of was discussed before, in one sense. So this question in itself of injustices that's taking place around the world, because we are so connected. UK is not just a nation in itself.
It's not a real island, is it?
And I think we forget sometimes actually what our government does has a massive impact on Pakistan, on Palestine, on Uganda, on Kenya and on the other countries and India. And we still got that emotional link with those people because we got relatives there in those countries. And not only that, the issue is still about race. If you look at on a national level, international level, if you look at the United Nations and you look at the Security Council, I would argue that we have a discriminatory system in the Security Council, which is actually not helping equality and fairness.
It's skewed.
It's not just skewed. How can you have, say, 15 organizations or nations, and out of the 15, you've got 7 of them that have a veto on any decision that can be made? And Palestine has shown that this discriminatory system has to be removed. We cannot continue on with this. And we need to have a debate. So our MPs and our government needs to have that debate. Otherwise, we are still in this emotionally, we are still slaves as black and brown people, in a sense on it. It's not a hard word to say that. If you look at what's happening in Africa, if you look at what's happening in Pakistan, I see it differently. I see that we are still going through this mentally and emotionally being enslaved. In fact, Iqbal Bhai, I would argue, black people and brown people can't even use the words that we want to use. We can't even say jihad anymore because people find that offensive.
Yeah.
We can't say from the river to the sea because they find that offensive. We can't say Allahu Akbar Iqbal Bhai because they find that offensive. So we are consistently being told as black and brown people, as Muslims,
do you feel that
we are in this position and this has got to be a debate. That's got to take place.
There's a different sort of category of freedom of expression. Depends who you are.
Of course there is.
Right?
And it's not even a debate anymore. The Palestine issue has shown the world of hypocrisy and double standards.
Now, as a young woman born in this country, grew up in this country, educated in this country, you've gone through the school system and everything else. Do you feel that as a young Muslim woman in this country, you are not seen as an equal citizen? And that applies through all the political structures as well. And that's one of the reasons why you want to see this change take place, that some of these issues that affect young people in particular are taken on more seriously.
Yeah, of course. And I was just going to go back to what you said about jihad. You know, it's what the media, sorry, I'm going to answer
No,
yours
that's
as
fine,
well.
yeah.
So what jihad means to us
Mm-hmm.
and the meanings we have are totally different to what's
Yeah,
being
absolutely.
portrayed in the media. So as soon as you mention the word jihad, you know, it means
You're a terrorist.
war, terrorists. And we've been afraid to speak out, say something that a white person, English person can say, and if we say it, we will be labelled as a terrorist.
Yeah. And
So,
this is the
you know,
disparity, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, Allahu Akbar, you know,
Allahu Akbar.
you know, it means something totally different, you know, to what it actually means. It means God is great, which would, you know, mean the same to, you know, Jews and Christians and anybody, you know. But, and
Do you feel that
and
we've got into this situation, Maqsood and Kamal, that we've not had people in positions, whether in local government or nationally, who are able to challenge that
Absolutely.
narrative?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
That's one of the
Of course,
failures.
yeah.
Sorry, that's one of the failures of our politicians,
Mhm.
Labour and Conservative. They haven't influenced the other people and say, "Hang on a minute, we as people of colour have every right to define our experiences in the term that we want to define them." That in itself is denying a human being of equality and fairness. Why is it that my white colleagues can say those words comfortably, yet I can't? Because I'm linked to either my own faith as a Muslim, which I'm proud to be as a Muslim, but yet I can't say the same terminology. Even the mainstream media, for example, if you say Israel is committing genocide, they tell you can't say that.
Are you
And to
then
me, I am
labelled as
very surprised.
anti-Semitic?
Anti-Semitic, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything now has become anti-Semitic, whatever you do.
Right.
And we've got people all, but yet, you can call Muslims names, you can abuse our prophet, you can burn the Quran, and that's acceptable under freedom of speech. So I think our politicians, our MPs and our councillors hasn't called that out. They hasn't called that hypocrisy out.
Do you, Sister?
And we are paying
Kamal,
price for
yeah.
that. Sorry, Iqbal,
Yeah,
but
no.
we at the local level, at a regional level, on a level of where average person is paid a price for that, because they're the ones who are paying price for
Oh,
not
yeah, definitely.
being
And I was
included,
gonna
not the
ask-
MPs.
I was going to ask Sister Kamal, do you feel that if you become a member of the council, inshallah, you will,
yeah.
with your colleagues, that you will have sufficient knowledge, experience within your team to be able to try and change that narrative within local government at the Bradford level? Because
Yeah.
one of the challenges is going to be that a lot of young people will have some real difficulty
Absolutely.
understanding how the structures work, right, in local government.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you have the wherewithal, and do you feel that you have the support structure that Maqsood mentioned earlier, people around you who can help you navigate through that process?
So we have Dalit, who's leader of the independents. We have 4 independents in there already.
Right.
We have Ishtiaq, who was an independent councillor since
Before you?
2012 to 2016.
Mhm.
Absolutely brilliant, you know, hearty, earthy people. Every independent that I've met is
Right.
genuine.
You've
is
got David
resilient.
Ward as well,
David
the
Ward we have,
former member
yeah.
of Parliament. Ishtiaq was on my
Yeah.
programme, yeah.
And we have, you know, I'm so impressed with the young people that have come forward. We have Ismail, who's 19, Atira, who's
Wow.
18,
Wow.
a student. We have Muhammad Ali, and I've known Muhammad Ali for the last 2 years.
Right.
And the first time I met him, I came away and I was so inspired by him because he's a lovely young lad, and I used to meet him every single week, and he's never let me down in the way that he approaches me and speaks to me. And he didn't need my vote, but he got my vote and my heart, you know.
Right.
And so we have these people that are keen to learn. And I'll tell you what, we'll do a better job of the, you know, councillors that are in the chambers right now. It's a disgrace to be £70 million in deficit. You know, how does that happen? How, you know, it's
How was that allowed
it's
to
not even
happen?
70,000, it's not even 700,000, it's £70 million, and there's going to be more cuts. And how many more cuts can you have? And for them to sit in them chambers and not question it and not challenge each other. And, you know, like you say, at national level and international level, this is where it begins from you know, the local level. So the government cuts are going to affect us at local level.
Right.
And that's what we need to challenge and ask the questions. And I think they've been covering each other's backs and they've been getting away with it for too long. You know, and they put these motions in and they don't make any sense, and, you know, they're just making fools of, you know, the people of Bradford.
Right.
And it's about time. And I think this is a revolution, and it will continue, and it will grow.
Bradford is a
inshallah.
vibrant city. It's got
Yeah.
one of the youngest populations in the
Yeah.
country, isn't it? And so under the age of 20.
Yeah.
It's one of the youngest. It was actually the youngest until I think you took over. Rochdale and Manchester.
Rochdale, yeah,
Yeah, before that,
close
it
to that,
was
yeah.
Bradford
Yeah,
used
that's
to be the
true.
youngest population. And do you feel that, you know, in that young population, you're going down every day knocking on doors, as you said, although you didn't like the idea of doing it, but it's part of the work that you
Yeah.
have to do, that when you're talking to young people, that they feel some new passion and some zeal in what the message that you're giving them?
Definitely with the independence, and definitely we need to make our young people resilient. We need to make them aware of what's happening. The mosques and the madrasas need to come on board, and we need to just educate and tell them to get out there and stand up for their rights. And it's going to get more difficult, and you know, it's really, really saddens me that, you know, I said this at the launch in my speech. I said my first racial experience was in primary school in the very heart of Ollerton. I had in a classroom, and
Right.
it's not changed. It's got worse. Yeah. So
Do you feel that it's getting worse day by day?
well, of course it is. There's a genocide happening, and nobody's calling
sorry,
it out.
yeah,
you
sorry,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Of course, you know.
do you feel that young people in Bradford at the moment,
Yeah.
or young people of colour,
Yeah.
are still suffering discrimination in the schools and in the education system, etc.?
Of course they are. Of
Yeah.
course they are. And when you challenge it, you're put to the side. They treat people as they wish, and they get away with it. Yeah. And the schooling, and I do believe that the education system has let down Muslim children and children of, you know, a certain you know, economic status in a
Right.
city.
The-
That we have our challenges, and they need to be addressed, and they need to wake up to this. And children's services in Bradford,
They've been found to be poor, I think, haven't they?
it's been taken away from them, you
Yes.
know, with the merger of Star Hobson in 2020. And what really saddened me, and I don't want to use this as any political gain, is when I read about Star Hobson, the 1-year-old child that was murdered, it was referred to social services 5 times. So how did they get away with that? Yeah. And then for that child to be murdered.
I mean, that was a real tragedy, and we know that.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had a local councillor, they'll say that we don't have the resources.
Yeah.
But I mean, some people are arguing that those resources have been misspent.
Yeah.
You know, and they've not been spent in the right direction. Now we understand that, you know, obviously local government, and there are many local authorities which are facing some huge financial challenges, and there's no doubt about it. But that is a separate debate that, you know, we need to talk about. But Maqsood,
There isn't, but on one hand, my challenge to that would be is this: if we can fund billions of pounds to Israel and Ukraine,
Yeah.
but yet we can't fund local schools, and yet we can't fund local NHS. We've got food banks everywhere. I don't buy into that argument, to be honest with you, that we don't have resources. We have resources. What we don't have is a prioritization of those resources.
we're not channeling
So
the
we're
right
quite
place.
happy on a national level, quite happy to have a government giving billions of pounds to actually commit genocide, to send money over, and we're doing that to Ukraine. Now, I'm thinking we should be questioning that. Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Why are we getting involved in wars and fights with the USA and others? And yet we've got food banks. Our hospitals are lacking of resources.
Right.
Our doctors are crying out for a rise. You know, we've got homeless people on the streets. We are the 5th richest country in the world. And yet, when it comes to local areas, to local needs and national needs, we're saying we have no resources. That is a myth that we've got to break. And our MPs have failed to break that myth. So I'm sorry, it comes back to politics again. The people who are in the parliament, that's what they should be challenging. That's what we are asking to put them in.
The government's argument would be, you know, I'm not trying to paraphrase them, but they would say, we're doing this in order to provide security to the United Kingdom. And
but who's attacking United Kingdom?
The decision that
sorry,
Sunak made,
Iqbal, you name me one country that's going to attack United Kingdom with the resources we have. You think Palestine's going to start attacking United Kingdom? You think Pakistan's going to start attacking United Kingdom?
What you're saying.
Again, we have this is what I'm saying. The challenge that sister's going to get is when she becomes a councillor, inshallah. It's about how brave are the independents to challenge that attitude, to that behaviour. Because she will face civil servants sitting there, the CEO, he'll be saying the same thing to her, to the independent, we don't have the money. And if they believe that and walk away from it, then they are no difference to the Labour or Tories. So they've got to have a different attitude. They've got to have an attitude saying, let's look at the banks, let's look at the money that's coming in from nationally. And the local MPs' responsibility is, why aren't they taking that issue back to the national level?
You've raised a very important point. I mean, we have 2 Labour members of Parliament. Right? We have Councillor Hussain and Councillor Naz Shah, right, out of the 3 in Bradford. How are they responding to the challenges of the independents? Have you heard anything? Have you seen anything? Have they said anything? Have they responded to your challenge to them? Because they're going to face challenges as well, maybe in a few months' time.
They definitely will. But we've not heard anything, to be honest. I know my MP is Naz Shah,
right.
And we've been emailing, people have her number. We've not had any response, really, any sort of genuine response.
I mean, to be fair to her, she did step down, or she had to resign, because she took a stance against Keir Starmer. Both of them had to.
Yeah, but they had to at that stage, didn't they? And I know Imran Hussain spoke up before, for the ceasefire. But
he made a very passionate speech.
Yeah.
And so
she
did Naz.
Initially ask for a ceasefire when she should have done. You know, she gave a statement on the 13th of October, I think it was, on a Facebook. You know, sort of both sides, you know, quite neutral. Not calling it out. And I think.
And do you feel that young people feel hurt by these 2 people having not taken that immediate and urgent action at the beginning to tell the leader how the community felt?
Well, of course.
Right.
Of course we do. We feel let down. We feel there's there's no words to express. There's a genocide happening, and there's across the whole of the UK and across the whole of the world. It's so sad that people, it's right visual in front of our eyes, and there's people that are against this genocide, and there's a group of people that are supporting it, and including the Labour councillors and the Labour MPs that are not speaking out against it, and who should have done. And that's why we're standing as independents, because they didn't. And now they're putting in motions, and they've actually gone and said that the independents are using it for political gain. How dare they say that? How dare they come out and say that we're using it for political gain when there's Labour, failures in Bradford Council? We had to step up and take this action because you haven't.
Right,
So it's goodbye to, the old party.
I mean, even the United Nations have acknowledged that there's a humanitarian catastrophe taking place, and there's a famine in the offing at the moment, unfortunately. And Israel is preventing food trucks from going in, and yet there's a lot of call. Even His Majesty the King has asked for a ceasefire and humanitarian aid to be submitted, to be allowed to go in, as far as I'm aware. But I mean, coming back, obviously the next few days is going to be really, really challenging for you.
Yeah.
Because the election's on the Thursday.
Yeah.
So in terms of the message you'd want to give to your constituents, for example, but also generally across the country, it would be what? To say, why should they go out on Thursday and make sure that their vote counts?
Because your vote does count, and right now there's a genocide happening, and Bradford Council is failing, so you need to come out at a local level, also at an international level. You need to come and vote against Labour. Their leader is Keir Starmer, who's saying it's okay not to have water, not to have food. 40,000 people have been murdered. Its last count was 25,000 orphans. It must be so much more. And they're going through this genocide right now. No schools, no education, everything's gone. And he's still supporting it, and he will continue to support it. So how can you go and vote for Labour? So you have to vote against Labour, because whatever the government does, they both the bus, you know, the
Oh,
same. Yeah,
yeah.
they're supporting it.
Right.
Labour
So
is supporting
you're
whatever
saying
the
that
government.
both parties are doing this,
Of course
have
they
got
are.
similar policies.
And they're going to continue to, you know, buy arms and, you know, sell arms to Israel, and we don't know what's going to happen next. So you need to use your vote wisely and come out and vote for the independents and vote for the alternative.
Maqsood,
take that stand.
You're a seasoned politician, although
I'm
not,
not a
not, not, not,
politician.
not actively involved in politics, but you sort of comment on politics and have been one of the sort of forerunners of the new generation.
I take an interest in
Yeah,
politics.
and have been guiding a lot of young people over the last few years in particular, because I know you've been mentoring some young people to go into politics. How do you know, I know you've got a group of people that you've been mentoring for the last 3 or 4 years in particular. Have you seen a change of attitude in that group, you know, in what's happened in the last 6, 7, 8 months?
Yeah, massive change.
Is there?
Absolutely massive change. And that change, sadly, I wish it hadn't occurred because of the Palestinians. Because the Palestinians have paid a price which no other group of people have paid. You know, 40,000 people murdered. And the whole Gaza has been just wiped out completely from that side of it.
Right.
It's a price that they paid, and the least that we can do, good people, like yourself, myself, and the sister and the others, and the good politicians, is actually to be fair and just. We're not saying anything different. And this is where the young people are saying, not only Muslim young people that I work with, but the non-Muslim young people, their consciousness has been raised that level that you can't really fool them anymore. The BBC and the Sky News and the CNN that they see or used to see, they don't believe in it anymore because it's very stark the way it's being portrayed. The social media that they're on, TikTok, X and the others, is where they get the information from. And that social media is far more powerful than any mainstream media. That's why people are struggling, the elites and the rich and are struggling to control that narrative. They control the narrative on the mainstream.
On the mainstream
and they
media.
control the politicians. Because you know me, you've heard me say this so many times. One of the biggest gaps that our Muslim community had, in my opinion, working in policy, is that we don't understand policy. We get involved in politics, but we don't really understand politics.
Yeah, or
You know, the politics that's happening now
policies that drives
is
it.
that the politicians use the vote under democracy to get elected, but then there are other influencing factors that change the policy. And that policy is changed based on lobbying, strong lobbyists, the billionaires who actually influence the policy. That's why Keir Starmer's not going to change his policy, because it's going to cost him a hell of a lot of money. Tory party will not change the policy on Palestine. It's always been the same. So the Muslims, in particularly the councillors, the MP, are now stuck in these two political parties where they know that their political parties will not change the policy on Palestine. And that's the challenge. And we don't have the caliber of MPs who can influence the Conservatives and the Labour to change the policy.
Well, I mean,
Young people are saying to me in the last session I had with them, I said, what would make you vote Labour? Change the policy. If they change the policy now, I didn't say that to them. I'm pleased that they're talking about policy. They're saying if the policy on Palestine and Kashmir changes, 90% of our problems as British Muslims will get resolved. Now, somebody out there is actually saying that's why they're not changing the policy. Because every political leaders and politicians want a conflict to deflect onto the issues.
Right. So yeah, I mean that's been a political game for many years and generations.
And it's continuous.
There's no doubt about it. But I mean, Sister Kamara, I mean obviously, when inshallah you become a councillor, what do you hope to achieve in your first, the 100 days, for example, working with your colleagues? What would you like to see change quickly in Bradford? I mean, I know that's a very difficult question to ask, because you don't know how it runs at the moment. You don't have the power politics that goes with it, right? I know it's probably an impossible question to answer, but I mean there must be something that you feel you can do straight away, for example, right?
Well, I hope to go in and ask the questions. Obviously, I've not been to any. I'm a member of the public. I haven't been to any council meetings, etc. So I think for me, I want to learn.
Right.
and I want to do the best that I can do. So in terms of when I left work because I couldn't juggle the two. So I wanted to do the best for my children and the best for my home life. And now my children are grown up, I'm going to go into hopefully politics or Bradford Council. You know, I'm not a politician, so I'm just a normal person, and I think independents are real people leading.
But you have
people.
the passion.
Yeah, so I have the passion,
Yeah.
and I'll answer that question.
And the drive. You have the passion and the drive.
And the drive, and
Yeah.
you know, on a humanitarian.
But you are a mother of young people, young children, right?
Yeah.
Your youngest, you say, is 12,
Yeah,
right? I mean, obviously, you must be worried about his future.
of course I'm worried.
You know,
Yeah,
in terms of
course
education, in terms of
yeah.
employment, etc.
yeah.
You know, is that something?
I'm worried on a global issue for all young people and my own children because there's a genocide happening, and if it could happen to them, you know, it can happen anywhere in the world. You know, anything can happen. There's no right or wrong left. You know, so it's about, you know, for Bradford Council, I think it's about having, you know, to answer your question, is having accountability, making them, you know, accountable for their actions and for where they spend their money, and putting it into, you know, local, putting it back into our local communities. That's where you begin from. And I think to change a society, you have to change yourself, and you have to start from, you know, small and work your way outwards. And that's all.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
But Maqsood, I mean, coming back to you, I mean, obviously, like I say, you mentoring young people at the moment, and you see them hopefully taking on some of these roles as they grow up and, you know, learn. Do you feel that there's a brighter future emerging working with these young people?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely, but I think our first generation have just got to move on. They've got to make space for those people to come through.
Right.
I can't see the Conservative and the Labour doing that. So there has to be the independents to make that happen. And we can see that in evidence now. But the independence has to have a different strategic approach. One thing advice I would give to the sister is that, not that she needs advice, is that never think that the CEO is, that you're working for the CEO. The CEO is working for you. This is one of the biggest mistakes that our politicians have made throughout. That they think they're working for the CEO. Whatever the CEO says for that, whether it's Rochdale, Oldham or Bradford, they can't really challenge it. That's the biggest thing that they've ever done. The other groups actually don't work that way. They actually said, this is what the community needs, whether it's in employment, whether it's actually on health issues, whether it's on hate crimes, and this is what we expect from you, CEO. The CEO works for the elected councillors.
Yeah.
And it's
And
your job
they
to
need
make
to
that
deliver.
policy happen.
Right.
Are you with me in a sense on it? That's my view of it.
Yeah. No,
'Cause
I
if you,
totally agree
if you
with you.
don't
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I'm afraid you're into this saying, well, it's all right. I asked one of the CEOs, he says, you know, Muslim councillors are the best councillors. I said, why is that? He says, because they never challenge. And he's right.
Well, I agree with
They,
this.
they were the best councillors for them.
Yeah, as you remember, I was an assistant director level person in local government. I had my own department, I had my own budget, so, you know, I knew exactly how the system worked, and, you know, you can manipulate the system the way you want to manipulate it, and let it run the way, you know, you want to run it, and hopefully take the councillors with you. I hope you found this interesting so far. Sister Kama is a role model for many, many young people, and I'm sure she will be a role model for many to come. And I think if, inshallah, you will win the election,
Inshallah.
and once you do, I'm going to ask you to come back again and share your experiences of both going through the campaign and once you're in the local government, you know, what you think about how the council is run and what we'd like to see change. So, you know, inshallah, we'll see you back very soon.
Yeah.
And your experiences, you know, having been here for the first time, she was very, very nervous, and I can understand why, but I hope you're much more relaxed, and as I said, time will fly quite quickly. Can I just take a moment to say congratulations to B4B, Bradford for Better, who have received the King's Award for Volunteer Service, something that I suggested that they should be doing a few years ago, and the people like Inaya Sher and others who've been working diligently quite hard over the many, many years. Finally, you have been recognized for the work that you've been doing, and many, many congratulations to yourself. Thank you for watching, thank you for coming along, and I hope, you know, that everything goes well for you. Maqsood, thank you for coming all the way across from sunny Rochdale, and, you know, crossing the Pennine border. I'm sure, you know, we didn't stop you there and ask for your passport, but maybe you never know, next time we will. You know, we might have to get a boat over here through the Manchester-Liverpool Canal. But thank you for coming. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found the program interesting. Inshallah, I'll see you next week. In the meantime, take care. Make du'as for Sister Kamal and her colleagues and every Muslim and every non-Muslim as well, and for peace in Palestine and humanitarian aid to get in. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.